you doing? Live from the streets of Kansas City in the heart of America. And the weather is turning. It's supposed to be, well, last night when I came in, it was almost 50 degrees, felt really balmy. Nearly short sleeve weather around here. But not now. It's 40 degrees and dropping. There's a light drizzle and it's expected to snow starting in the next hour or so, and but I don't think it's going to accumulate very much. I think it's just going to be maybe an inch or so. And then for the next week it's supposed to get really cold. Oh boy. Let me switch. Because I'm sure everybody just wants to see my beautiful face on the video. When I was coming in, I was ranting and raving about how we are allowing, probably because of politics, I don't know what that thing is in the street, a person who's going around threatening bodily harm to elected members of Congress and elected officials and regular officials, and it's a real extreme nut job. But because we play politics, if you or I said the things that she said, Marjorie Taylor Greene is the person I'm talking about. This person everybody seems to be talking about, and she's not worth the attention, really. I started calling her Marjorie Trader Greene. But if you or I were to say the things that she's been saying, we wouldn't get away with it for a second. It would all be about, well, be labeled an extremist. We wouldn't be able to fly an airplane or probably take any other public transportation. Heck, they probably would say, no, you can't even be around a school ground or close to a church or anything. You're just a dangerous person. Rightfully so, really. Because we have had people, we don't know what their intentions are. And most people, you know, in mine and everyone's experience, most people just full of talk. They talk a good game, but when it comes down to it, they don't have the action to back up the words. But what's bad about some people, you know, like like our ex-president Voldemort, he who should not be named, is that they can get other people riled up, other people who are maybe a lot less hinged in the seemingly crazy people who are trying to whip all these people up. And that's exactly what they do, is they get them charged and ready to go, ready to take action. Lots of destruction going on here in Kansas City. And so, yeah. And especially if a person has a bit of legitimacy to them, like they're an elected official themselves. Although these days, with all the cheating that's going on and going around, there's a certain group of people who keep going around saying that the elections are rigged and everything's cheating. But with the gerrymandering that's been happening and the playing of the rules and trying to get people to take away other people's votes and stuff, we know exactly who's doing the cheating, and it's the ones who are yelling the loudest about it, cheating, when it doesn't. I don't know, just give me a break. You want to be wannabe dictators, these fascists. I could tell that the weather was going to change because it probably gets worse as I get older, but I have deep set mood swings, and my mood this overnight hours this morning have been really kind of yucky. And so I'm like, yeah, I think the weather is changing. I heard it was going to do something. So I looked at the radar on my phone, and sure enough, there was all sorts of rain and stuff around, and, to help, because I work in a cave. I don't have really any windows. I do have a window outside my door, but I can't really, my back is to it. Working overnight's not much to see anyway. So I'll put on YouTube in the background, and I'll put on generally a scene from somewhere in Asia where the sun is going down, because it's dark where I'm at. So I'll watch the afternoon and the sunset from Thailand or Japan usually. I wish I could get the Philippines, but they're so tight-fisted on their internet plans in the Philippines that nobody could afford to hook up a camera and live stream. But in Japan, you got some cameras. There's plenty of cameras from Japan. You got 4K and everything. Thailand is sort of in between. There's some beautiful beaches that people use. So they have a camera on them, but there's the island of Koh Samui keeps coming up. That's a big vacation spot, and it's beautiful from what I can see. But Koh Samui during the pandemic has lost a lot of their cameras, and a lot of them weren't showing much anyway because they have them fixed on some of the night hotspot bars where usually European men pick up on Thai girls, and the bars are designed for that purpose. And so they have these cameras pointed at the quote-unquote action, making air quotes here with my hands, and those bars haven't been very active lately. As a matter of fact, Thailand has been very strict. It's a country with it's an Asian country and large populations generally. They've been doing so much better than the United States as far as pandemic. Philippines too. Philippines realized when, because I don't have access to live stream cameras, but there are plenty of people doing walking tours, and gave me the idea to do it. My neighborhood, or like Lawrence, Kansas, I did a walking tour last week because people really want to see that. They want to see what's there. They want to see if they want to go visit somewhere, they like to be familiar with it. Give them a good walk around tour and talk about how things are and what shops you can see or whatever. And so there are a lot of people doing that in the Philippines, especially in Cebu, which is where my wife is from. And it dawned on me, one of the reasons why the Philippines are doing so much better in the United States is they just didn't mess around. They shut down all their bars. I mean, shut them down. They're boarded up. They've been that way since March. And, we complain bitterly about how we don't have any social life here, and it's depressing. And man, I tell you, in the Philippines, that move they made really, really hurts. And it hurts in a way that people here don't understand. There are people who can't at all, and they don't get welfare or help from anywhere. little idea doesn't cross our minds, our spoiled minds here, because we have a pretty decent welfare system in this country. You know, very empathetic government agencies and things designed to help people, even though we have people here in this country who resent that. But I tell you, American conservatives can go to other countries and find themselves considered quite liberal in other places in the world. Likewise, you know, an American liberal can go to Europe and be considered quite conservative over there. So there's a range of things. But actually, it is admirable what a lot of Asian countries, except Japan. The court's out on Japan. I think their government is... I heard somebody complaining. There's a guy in Tokyo. He does a walking live stream, and like I say, there's plenty of access to high speed internet in Japan, and he was walking. The Japanese government is, and I'd actually heard that. Not necessarily the incompetence part. I always thought of the Japanese as being the stereotype is that they're hyper efficient and everything is, you know, they're really good at everything and brilliant. But apparently the government there is just not so much. And what he was saying was that they've been bungling everything. And what I've heard about Japan is that government officials are afraid to tell people what to do. And so it's kind of like America. You have places where people don't follow the guidelines. Nobody's going to tell them what they need to do. There's nobody there saying, hey, put on your mask. And so there are quite a few areas where Japan could be one of the countries that has a problem. And so far, they really haven't, I don't think. They've gotten lucky. But I think part of that is because of the Japanese people themselves. You don't have to tell them to wear a mask. They do it without a pandemic. As a matter of fact, what did I hear? Culturally in Japan, if you have a cold, if you have sniffles, if you have a cough, it's considered polite to wear a mask. So they've already had that in their culture. And here in America, we're like, there's people walking around going, that's an infringement on my rights. It's like, no, you're infringing on other people's rights by spreading disease. Now do what you're supposed to do and be a responsible adult. I mean, you know, if you were to believe the hyperbole party of responsible adults, conservative, grown up, not much fun, and here we are with Republicans complaining about masks and how this conspiracy and that conspiracy are just totally illogical and crazy, like children. How is it in the United States the Democrats are becoming the adults in the room and the Republicans are the crybabies about everything? I mean, look at he who should not be named, Voldemort. Look at what he did. He cried so much. He was such a poor sport. They almost had to evict him out of the White House with military force. He's so upset and such a poor sport. He pretty much destroyed the American tradition of peaceful transition of power. And there are people walking around going, that's great. Like, what's her name? Marjorie Taylor Greene. And if they'd stop and look at it, they'd realize, you know what? We really are becoming the fifth column. We are aiding and abetting America's adversaries. But, you know, there's some people who are so bigoted and hateful that they would rather turn this country into eastern Ukraine or Lebanon during the 1970s, or Libya now, just because they don't want to get along with their neighbors, and they call that freedom. I think that we're getting some of the solid stuff starting to come down. It almost sounds like little pellets of ice. Yep, I can see it. It's little pellets of ice. What do they call that? Sleet? It's not hail, it's sleet. Sleet is much finer than hail, thank God, because I'd hate to be driving in a hailstorm. There's a reason why they call them hailstones, because they are like stones that fall from the sky and destroy everything that can even be known to kill living things walking around. But I don't know, these bitter, bigoted people in this country, they want to take us into fighting amongst ourselves, and they don't. It's not going to be what a romantic adventure like people imagine. It's going to get tiresome really, really fast. And actually, I think at first it'll seem like a crime wave, like, you'd be driving down the road and worried about bandits shanghaiing you in your car and your family. Kind of like, northern Mexico because of the drug trade. I don't know if it'll ever go to an organized institutional situation where you have sections of the country separating from, unless something, which is a possibility. But I think that why I'm calling the QAnon people the Quisling movement or the fifth column is because it seems like they're working for Russia. And I think that's where a lot of this Q stuff comes from. It's psychological warfare coming out of either Russia or China or both. And gullible people just, I'm bored, sleeping in my mommy's basement. Spend 17 to 20 hours a day in front of a computer. Gotta wear sunglasses in moderate light because I'm ruining my eyesight by staring at a screen all day. I'm staring at a screen all day. Insane because, staring at a screen all day will make you insane. We've seen some of these crazies. We've seen people that I think should seriously be looking at, like, should you be in an institution? People who are doing this thing on other people's dime, they're begging for people for money. Oh, I need to go to Washington so I can burn down the Capitol building. Can you please send me money? Oh yeah, well, we'll send you money to the enablers. If you're just tuning in, it's sleeting. It's supposed to do some wintry stuff today. At midnight when I came in, actually kind of comfortable. And then when I was leaving, I could see the wind had shifted and it's starting to get a cold wind. And now the temperature when I left was 40. Now the temperature is in the 30s. One of the things I had learned before I left to go to work last night was Canada has officially terrorist organization, and I'm like, good, more power to you. Keep them out of your country. Wish we could kick them out of ours. Quizzling and on. I was clicking around when I had, a few minutes, and I saw, there's an actual report from Canada. And, this old man, I don't know who he was, an official in the Canadian government, was not sorry. He was very, very happy to let the world know that Canada is the first country to declare Quislinganon a terrorist organization. I think in some ways, de facto, the FBI and the CIA and the NSA have kind of have them on their watch list as the same terrorist organization, and they're watching people. I hope they're listening to their, they're talking about them the same way a couple of years ago they would talk about Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State. Oh, we're hearing chatter. Remember, like, the week of the inauguration, they were talking about, we're hearing chatter that they're going to stage violent protests at all the state capitals. So it's just amazing that we're talking about these people who are American citizens, but we're talking about them like they are an enemy force to be reckoned with, which is what they are. I've been around people, you just don't dare say that you have an opinion different from theirs. They are so... I mean, if you go in certain places and you say, you can get beat up. I've been in some places where if you say, I'm pro-Trump, I was going to say you get beat up, but no, I've never really witnessed. It's more like you get browbeat. You get seriously ignored. Maybe you get booed. Boo! Well, I was listening to Gary Lezak talk about this, and he's been spot on so far. If you don't know, Gary Lezak is a NBC affiliate weatherman for Channel 41, the TV station I work at. And I'm not being biased when I say that. He is actually an amazing weatherman. Yep, this sleet is just changing over into snow. I can see it. Oh boy, my wife's gonna be like, I don't want to drive in it. And I'm like, come on, you have a Subaru. It's all-wheel drive. You can handle it. Just take it sleazy. That's what I tell her every time, and she gets mad at me, and then then she gets to work and she's fine, and she says, I'm so stressed out at work from my drive. And I'm like, the biggest thing you have to worry about in driving in this kind of weather is you have to be careful. But if you know you're careful and you know how to handle it, the biggest thing you have to worry about is other people who are not so careful and don't know how to handle it, or who drive like maniacs. Oh, it's changing over into big fluffy flakes now. Excuse me. This is, after all, Miller time for me. This is my 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Although I tell you, the schedule, when your schedule is the opposite of everybody else's, it's just weird all the way around. And you sleep during the day, you don't necessarily sleep as well. And then you can't sleep at night, but you do try and get a couple hours of sleep, like a nap. So your main sleep is during the day, and then your nap is at night, right before you go to work. And there's quite a few hours in there where you're awake. And so, you know, imagine if you get up for a nine to 5 job, but you get up at 3 or 4 in the morning every morning. So by the time you get home at 5 o'clock, you're just ready for bed. And that's the way it is for me right now. I'm just ready for bed. And I usually maybe stay up an hour. But half the time, even though I stay up an hour, I find myself falling asleep wherever I'm sitting, so I just get up and go to bed. I keep saying that when the weather gets nicer, I'm going to, instead of going straight to bed, I'm going to take the dogs for a walk or whatever, but I don't know. Excuse me. Well, I'm gonna